Team Canada to ensure that Canadian families and businesses are helped through the economic implications of COVID-19. Our local MPs have been hard at work guiding us through all these changes and ensuring that we have access to the most current resources and information provided. They're here today to give you an update and then answer your questions. So in a moment, I will ask MP John Brassard and Doug Shipley to introduce themselves, give a relevant update, and then we'll proceed directly to the Q&A. Now to submit a question, please choose the Submit Question to Moderator option within your Zoom platform, then type out your question. I'll read the questions and direct them to the panel for response. And with that, we will start with MP John Brassard for a quick intro.
Hey, thanks, Todd. I know you've given us 10 minutes, but my preference is to get to the Q&A, and I think that would be Doug's preference as well. Just an update on at the federal level. Since we last spoke to the Chamber on the webinar, Parliament did approve last Tuesday into Wednesday a multi-billion-dollar aid package. The amount of that aid package turned out to be roughly around $107 billion. There's a tremendous amount of information that's available out there with respect to the CERB and the wage subsidies. We've seen over the course of the last week the government respond to concerns from business. I know that the Chamber, through the Ontario and Canadian chambers, have been very strong advocates on behalf of business across the country. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business has done the same. And so, we have really tried to engage as much as we can with local businesses. And I know Doug has as well. Todd and I have talked regularly about some of the concerns locally, and we really try to push that message on to the government. The obvious concern was the 10% wage subsidy that was originally announced. The government did bump that up to 75%. And again, there's information out there on that, but we can talk about that a little bit later, which was really a critical move by the government, because again, that's what businesses were telling the government they needed in order to, at a minimum, keep employees on the payroll. And so there's still a lot of questions about the 75%. I know the finance minister came out the other day and held a press conference about what qualifies the 30% revenue situation, decline in revenue. There's a lot of other things that businesses have to meet in order to meet that criteria. But it really plays to the fundamental belief that business was in a better position to look after their employees than having everybody come over to the employment insurance rule. So far, we've seen roughly 1.6 million Canadians have applied for the employment insurance, which is being merged into the Canadian Emergency Benefit, the wage benefit, the CERB it's called, 1.6 million Canadians. And so the fear that I've had, and I expressed this publicly, is that the system was going to collapse under its own weight, because never in the history of this country have so many Canadians applied for emergency relief for employment insurance. And so the argument was always that business would be better off looking after the employees. And that's why that 75% wage subsidy was so critical if businesses had the opportunity to apply for it and to implement it. Because who knows, the big thing is, and this has always been our argument, is that the CRA has business information already. They have the business's bank account, they have their tax numbers, so we were really looking for a simplified system to allow the government to transfer money to businesses so that they can meet their payroll obligations and keep people on the payroll. The challenge right now is that we're going to see roughly about a 3 to 6 week delay, according to the finance minister, before any of that money gets to business. And I think it's simple. I've talked to many local businesses. Todd, you and I have had this conversation as well, that if the business wants to apply for the wage subsidy, it should be a simple, not a complex system. And this is the way I envision it. And at 11 o'clock this morning, I'm on a conference call with our small business critic to really push the government to implement this type of system. Businesses know what their payroll is. They know what 75% of that is. As simple as telling the government what that number is and having the government hit send to transfer that money into the business's account so that they can meet their payroll obligations for the next 16 weeks. That's how simple the system should be, but it's been made somewhat complex, and this is the concern among small business groups and advocates across the country, that there is a level of complexity and misunderstanding about how the system is going to be implemented. And so over the course of the next couple of days, we're really going to be pushing the government to simplify this in advance of any further legislation that may come forward. Now, when I talked about the legislation being implemented a couple of weeks ago, the way it was implemented was with the measures that had already been announced by the government up to that point. The challenge now is that there's been so many changes within not just the wage subsidy issue, but the CERB issues and other issues that we're going to have to see specifically what's in this new legislation if and when Parliament is recalled, as the Prime Minister has indicated, next week. So I hope that doesn't add to the confusion. The other night I posted a link to a tax assessment from Moody's Tax Canada on the Finance Minister's announcement. I think for anybody who's listening today, and the link was broken, so I actually tagged Todd and the Chamber on it because I thought it was a good, valuable resource for businesses to get a sense of what the new wage subsidy looked like and the programs that have been announced for business. And it's still up on my Facebook page, my MP page. So I encourage anybody to go have a look at it. It's about 2 hours, but they really break down and assess the changes that are coming. So from our standpoint, what I really want to find in the course of the discussion today over the next hour is to really see where you, as local business here in Barrie, see where some of the gaps that need to be addressed are, and give us some ideas so that we can bring it back to the government. Innovation, for example, small business clusters, the innovative sector isn't covered. Those that are in business development at this point, who may have been pushing out, and really looking to expand their business, they're not covered either under the wage subsidy or the emergency relief benefits. So those are the types of gaps that we really want to be discussing today. As I said, the information is out there. My website, johnbrassard.com, is updated almost hourly as this information comes out and is changed. And the canada.ca website and the COVID-19 response for individuals and businesses is updated regularly as well. So the information is out there. I know that there's a lot of confusion, and hopefully we can clear up any confusion. I can tell you, and I'm sure Doug can tell you as well, it's a tremendous amount of difficulty getting through to the bureaucracy right now, even from my office. Whereas prior to this COVID-19 crisis, we might have been able to get an answer within an hour or two because we had dedicated lines to individuals who worked in the tax office or Service Canada. We are finding it as difficult as everybody else is, even through an MP's office, to get through to the appropriate government agency. So, we're trying to help as much as we can and trying to interpret as best we can, either through our shadow ministers who are on top of these issues, or through the government as well. So I'll leave it at that. But really, I do want to emphasize that we are here to find gaps in the systems so that we can be your voice and get that message back to government, so that if they are adjusting or adapting the fiscal framework or the policy with respect to small business, we want to make sure that they're aware of it. So thanks, Todd.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Mr. Shipley, any comments, introduction?
Thanks, Todd, and thanks, John. And I'll be a little bit briefer than John because he's touched on a lot of good points there. But I just want to first of all introduce myself. As you know me, I'm Doug Shipley, member of Parliament for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Todd, for organizing this today through the chamber. We're going to try and give you as many answers as we can today, but I also want to touch on what John said. We're also here today to get your questions and find out what we're missing. John used the word gaps, and he's exactly right. There are some gaps out there, and we need to go back to the government and find out what is being missed. John was exactly right about information. One of the things we're hearing in our office, and I want to stress this to people, that our office is still open and being manned. We are not open for walk-ins right now, obviously, and due to the situation, but we do have staff in our office manning the phones and emails, and we do have staff working remotely also from their homes. So we are there to help you. We're there to serve you. Information is the key thing I think most people are looking for right now, everybody. We're trying to get as much out as we can. There is a overload almost right now of information. Sorting through it is sometimes the trouble and the problem. I have actually dedicated one staff, and their job is pretty much predominantly full-time to be taking all the information that's coming in, trying to feed that into a more short Coles Notes version for people to understand. And we're updating, as John said, he's doing his website. We're doing the same thing. So if you do go to our website, which is www.dougshipleymp.ca, you will find all the information that we're going to be discussing today, including some very, very helpful links that go to most of the programs that are being offered right now. I also would, Todd, if I could, just if everybody wants to grab a pen and a piece of paper, I'd like to give out my email and our phone number because we are still open. And one of the problems that is happening, I'd like to just mention this, is we're getting inundated with calls, emails, which is great. We're there to help everybody. There's also a lot of questioning being asked on social media. And that's where it starts to get a little tricky because it's tough to monitor all the social media and the questions coming in there. We would prefer to get our questions to our office, to our email and our phone. So if people could kind of pass that message around. Social media is a great place to get information out, but it's not a great place to be in dialogue with helping people with specific questions. So if I could give my email, which is doug.shipley@parl, PARL.gc.ca, or our phone number, our office is 705-728-2596. Please direct your questions to those resources. We will get back to you. We are a little inundated right now. We're getting literally hundreds of calls and emails every single day, but we do have staff still on full time. We'll make sure we get back to you with their answers. I just want to pass on also, obviously everybody knows we're going through tough times. I'm feeling them along with everybody else. I am still a small business owner and also a landlord. So a lot of the questions we're getting are around those two issues. So I'm trying to also deal with my own business situations at the same time. So I'm wearing a few hats, and I'm well aware of the tenant landlord situation that's going on right now too. So there's many questions that have come in. I'm dealing with them some myself, and hopefully we're here to answer some of the questions today. But once again, if you could email or call any questions that you get after this, would be greatly appreciated. And once again, thanks, Todd. And we're here to answer as many questions as we can. If we can't answer them today, I've got a pen and a piece of paper here. We'll make sure we do get them the answer when we get it.
Yeah, Todd, just one more thing, if I can jump in too. You may notice that there's another John Brassard on here. So yes. Yeah, one of my staff from my office is taking notes today from this webinar. If there are any questions that we can't answer, then we'll find out the answer and then we'll get back to you, and I'll share them with Doug as well. So that's one thing. But I do want to say too that like Doug, our office is, I got 5 full-time staff right now that are that's in both my Barrie, Innisfil and my Ottawa office, and their sole responsibility is to be as reactive as we can in a quick and timely manner to the phone calls and the emails, the hundreds of phone calls and emails that are coming in. Social media is not the way to get our attention. We're putting a lot of information out there, as Doug said, but oftentimes if somebody's asking us a question, it gets lost in the hundreds of comments that come in on a thread. So we're asking everybody to contact us by email or by phone if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, John. And for those of you that are listening and you weren't able to get a pen or get anything on time there, the Chamber has and will continue to share the information on how to contact both of our MPs here. So you will find that on our site. So you don't have to scramble to find that. And also just a reminder to everyone to submit a question to the moderator. Please choose this option within your Zoom platform, type out your question, and I will direct the questions to our panelists. And with that, we will get right into the first question. It comes up. So, confused about the CERB. Can our employees access this if they're eligible for EI? Do they need 2 consecutive weeks not working to access this? And which program is best for them, the CERB or EI? And then another part to that is, can our employees access EI if they have reduced hours? Lots of questions, smiley face, and I'll turn it over to you two.
Okay.
Start off with a tough one. John, you want to start off with that?
Well, it's simple. So what we're telling everybody is simple in the sense of the process. The CERB portal will be launching on Monday, April 6th. Now, within that portal, just because, again, of the volume of people that will be involved, they're asking, maybe Doug, you could pull this out as I'm talking, but they're asking for birth dates or birth months to be the days of application so that they can stagger the volume of applications that are coming in. So the CERB, the benefit is basically, if you earn $5,000 in 2019 or $5,000 or above, you'll be eligible for the CERB. They've waived the waiting period as well, but the important thing to understand is that the EI system, so those that are affected by COVID, not those that are affected in advance of COVID, but those that are affected by COVID in the situation that you indicated, will be eligible for the new CERB. That's so effectively EI will not exist, but you also need 14 days in a four-week period without income as well. So again, in advance of the COVID-19, the EI system, you're still going to be on that EI system if you've been approved. If you're going to be out of 14 days of income with because of in a 4-week period because of this situation, then you will be eligible for the CERB. Okay, so Doug, you might want to address the application process through the portal on Monday.
Yes, thanks, John. So it is very important, and everybody, again, I'll give you a second here to grab a pen and paper because this is very important information. The portal is opening on Monday. They have some concerns that if everybody jumps on there in one day, the system could be overwhelmed and crash. So we're giving a guideline out as to months of birth to which day you should be applying on. So I'll repeat these very slowly, very methodically here, make sure everybody can understand these to pass this along to all your employees.
Yeah, and
so
sorry, Doug, just interject one sec. Again,
Yeah.
Please go ahead with the info, but for those of you out there, don't scramble. We will immediately put this information on the Chamber website, all our social media, right after this Zoom meeting is over. So, don't scramble and say I have to hurry and get it. I want Doug to continue and make sure you do get the info now, but don't fret, don't scramble. We will ensure it's out there for you right away. Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Nope, that's all right. And thank you for that, Todd. I just didn't want to scramble through it too quick and people thinking they're panicking to get it. So that's great information. So I will read it through though, but that's great to know it's going to be posted later. So if you were born in January, February, or March, Monday, April 6th is your best day to apply. Born April, May, or June, Tuesday, April 7th is your day to apply. July, August, and September, Wednesday, April 8th is the day to apply. October, November, or December, Thursdays, April 9th is your best day to apply. Any month can apply on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. So that's where they've broken it down right now. hopefully people will abide by that, because we really don't want the system to be inundated and overwhelmed on Monday when it opens up.
So the other thing I would say, Todd, what's critically important as well for people is that they register with the CRA with the CRA My account.
Yes.
That's critical to receive the CERB, and do it as quickly as possible. So make sure that they register early. The other thing that I would say as well is that if you are eligible for EI, you don't need to apply for the CERB. If your EI runs out, then you can apply for the CERB later, but you must renew your CERB application every month to confirm that you're unemployed. And so, again, all of that information is available either through our websites, Doug and my website, or through canada.ca. And I know you're going to make it available too, Todd.
Right, great, thanks, John. So I have a comment on that. Maybe one of you two can jump in here. We had a business called the Chamber yesterday. They reached out to me, and one of their employees who is right now on a layoff due to COVID-19 and has filed for EI, that individual got a notice that they have automatically been switched over to the CERB. And so this person was asking me directly about other employees, and I said, I can't tell you how that's going to work, because whether they're going to qualify more for the CERB or whether they're going to qualify more to be on EI based on what their rate of pay is. So I don't know if CERB, if people from EI will all be switched over, if it's more beneficial to them or not. Do either one of you have an idea on that?
So the answer to that is, if in advance of COVID, you had already applied for EI and had been approved for EI, then you're going to stay on EI. If as a result of COVID, you need to apply, you'll be applying under the CERB. Now, the maximum allowable for EI is again, I don't have the exact number. It's 500 and something that a person is allowed to receive, whatever that number is.
I think it's 573, something like that.
Right,
yeah.
I was going to say 587, but I didn't want to be wrong. But
it's in that neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, but the CERB benefit as a result of job impact related to COVID will be $2,000 a month, $500 every week for a period of 16 weeks. And so that's why it's important to open a CRA account so that they have all your information. And that's why it's important, as Doug said, to make sure that on Monday when this portal opens, that you access the portal with the information that Doug gave you in terms of your birth month and all of that. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, gentlemen.
Can I just add one thing on that?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Just so people are aware, maybe a small thing, but if you're going to be speaking with your employees, they need to know that the CERB is a taxable benefit, and it will be deducted by $200 at source. So the actual monthly income will be $1,800 on that.
So 200. Thank you. All right. Next question. I'm a small business owner. My business is being closed as we are deemed non-essential. The mortgage deferral is being offered to people with federal banks. I'm with a provincial bank, so we don't qualify for funding. What can I do? My business is our only source of income.
So you want me to address that, Doug? Or
Yeah, go ahead, John.
yeah. So this is provincial bank, assuming that they're speaking about credit unions.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's literally tens of thousands of businesses across this country who bank through credit unions, specifically in provinces like Quebec, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta. Ontario obviously has the similar situation, but so the injection into the system by the federal government through the banking system and through the Bank of Canada is only for the federally regulated banks. Just yesterday at Finance Committee, this very issue came up, and our Shadow Minister for Finance, Pierre Poilievre, brought it up with the Finance Minister, Bill Morneau, and we followed it up with a letter to the Finance Minister asking him to open this up to the banking, to the credit unions as well. And so we haven't got a response on that, but this is an example of some of the gaps, and this one being a significant gap in the system where credit unions aren't being backstopped with taxpayer money like the chartered banks, the federally regulated banks are. And so I'm hoping that over the course of today, we get a response back from the finance minister. His response yesterday at finance committee was that he was going to bring it back to finance officials to see what they can do. And I think it's important to understand too, because I know, a lot of businesses have gone to their banks, they've asked for mortgage deferrals, they've asked for loans. The Bank of Canada has injected $300 billion worth of liquidity into the banking system. And the federal government has injected over $70 billion to the banks to ensure that they're backstopping the loans that businesses may be asking for. And this is a topic of conversation that I've been having with many local business owners. And I know that listen, the last thing you want to do is incur any more debt. But there's a $40,000 backstop loan by the federal government that's available at your bank right now. This is not business as usual at the banks. And the banks, oftentimes will sit there and look at, the black and white of this situation. It's not like that. And they have to, and I want everybody that's on this call and the chamber to know that it's taxpayer dollars, billions of taxpayer dollars that are backstopping these loans to these banks. So if you get any pushback from your bank, if you do decide that you want to have access to that $40,000 loan, which is intended to get you through this process at interest-free, and then if you pay back the portion that you use, up to $10,000 will be forgiven. If the bank pushes back on you on that, you make sure you tell them that these are my tax dollars that are backstopping this within the system, and that they shouldn't be so rigid, and they should be looking at each individual circumstances and not treating this situation like they normally would, if a business or an individual went into a bank looking for a loan. This is much different, and it's backstopped by taxpayer dollars, your dollars.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, John. All right, next up, the initial announcement mentioned that revenues for charities and not-for-profits would be calculated differently. Do we know the timing for when those formulas will be available?
Doug,
I have not seen those. Have you seen those yet, John?
What was the question again, Todd? Just give it to me again.
It was in regards, sorry, Don, it's in regards to not-for-profits.
Right.
Apparently it's going to be calculated differently, the formula, and when would that formula be available? Because for the regular business sector, it's the 30% factor. You have to show that you're 30% less, right?
Right. Okay. So this is, you're talking specifically for the wage subsidy?
Yeah, just for not-for-profits, yes.
Okay. So I have not heard anything on the formula itself, Todd. And I will defer. I'll defer on that because we haven't got a clarification. Again, like I go back earlier, there's been a lot of confusion with respect to the numbers, and in some cases, things have changed within a matter of days.
Yes.
The legislation that was passed about the wage subsidy, 2 days later, the Prime Minister came out and announced something completely different. So on the issue of charity and not-for-profits, I have not seen anything that provides any clarification on how that 30% will be impacted and how that calculation will be made with respect to the wage subsidy. So I don't have an answer for that, but when we do, we'll make sure that it's available to you, okay?
Excellent, thank you.
Todd,
All right, sorry,
Todd?
go ahead, Doug. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If I could just add to that, I understand that I want to make clear that if some people are getting a little frustrated with us not knowing all the answers, the facts are we just don't know them all yet. The Prime Minister is making many announcements every day, and that's fantastic. We're all working together. We're all there for Canadians. But once the announcement's made, doesn't mean we have the detailed information in our hands immediately. We're still waiting for some of the information. So the announcements are out there. The government needs to put together the plans to implement them, and then they send it out to us. So I just don't want people getting a little frustrated thinking we don't aren't giving the answers. Quite frankly, we don't have the details yet. But once we get them, as I said, we will be posting them. I just want to make that clear so people understand, so the frustration level doesn't rise a bit this morning.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Doug. And that's a good point that people might not understand is that, yeah, as much as the Prime Minister or the Premier announce these things that are available, it's how the fallout is going to be, how they're going to get it out to the businesses, to the people. And not all those details are worked out when they make those announcements. So you, as much as anybody else, are waiting for those details. You're just at the forefront that hopefully you'll get them quicker than us, or as quick that we can get that information back, you know, to the members of the chamber, the sandbox, to individuals and all that out there. So thank you.
See, what's important here, Todd, is that, as I said at the onset, I mean, Parliament has given the government billions of dollars for these programs. It's now up to the government to execute, and that's their sole responsibility. Frankly, I mean, they hold the levers of power. They have the decision-making powers. It's up to them to execute, and I'm not going to put blame on them.
Right.
But there's been a lot of quite frankly, a lot of confusion over some of these programs. So there's been changes. There's been name changes to programs. And so, you know, maybe this is my fireman mentality in me, but, you know, things have to be kept simple here. And when you create a complexity that's not required, and this is a complex situation, but the resolve or the results of this complex situation should be much more simplified, in my opinion, than what they are. And I go back to what I said earlier about what's your payroll, what's 75% of that, click send, money goes to businesses, and they keep their employees on the payroll through this wage subsidy if they want to. All that information of that business is held by government. So, you know, that's been my concern, frankly, Todd, is the level of complexity of some of these programs is creating a lot of confusion. And when you create confusion, you create doubt. And the last thing business needs is uncertainty in a incredibly uncertain time right now. So that's why sometimes Doug and I are sort of scrambling, because we're not getting the information as much as what your members are. And as I said, we've lost a bit of that lifeline to the bureaucracy, because now everything is shifted over to trying to make sure that these programs are implemented and the money goes out the door as quick as possible. So the whole of bureaucracy is working on making sure that that gets done.
Yep, great, thanks, John. And that's sort of a segue actually into our next question, because as you stated there, you know, the government is familiar with you. They have your business number on file. You're registered. You pay your taxes. They know your payroll, etc. Yeah. So we'll go into the next question then. So it'll be interesting to see your takeaway from this. And it says, for small startup businesses that are in their first year, there seems to be gaps in the assistance available. We seem not to be able to meet the threshold levels that are being circulated currently. Many owners are not eligible for EI or CERB. Any initiatives being worked on to help these businesses?
So again, you know, it's the government's job to execute from the multi-billions of dollars that they've been given. And yesterday, on a Zoom call that was organized by the the Council of Canadian Innovators, there were about 1,500 people yesterday afternoon who were on this call. The innovation minister, to address the concern of the question that you just asked, Todd, acknowledged the issue and said that many startups just won't qualify. You know, he said that the bottom line, and then I'm not going to bullshit anybody. This is what he said. He said the bottom line is that this issue was raised with the Minister of Finance yesterday as well. He said he's raised the issue. He told these 1,500 innovators that he fully understands this and that we as a government recognize this, and that he's working out the details, and we're going to do our best to see what they can do to address this concern. So, you know, startups, to your point, have been left out on this. I know that, you know, we've been pushing the government on this because many of those startups are in the process of expanding. They may not necessarily have the high level of overhead that many businesses do, but they were on the start of expanding. and pushing out whatever value proposition that they've developed. And so, it is disconcerting, but when the Minister of Innovation acknowledges the fact that these businesses have been left behind, these startup businesses, these innovators have been left behind, I think that's obviously concerning to not just the people that are involved in that business, but should be concerning in terms of the future of these innovations, these ideas that these innovative entrepreneurs are creating, and how that is going to stop through this crisis, when in fact it should be accelerating, because many of these ideas that have been created will be just the very things that we need post recovery of COVID-19. And so, for me, being a strong supporter of local innovation, it would be a shame to see these businesses not be able to proceed or not get through this and lose what value they can provide at the back end of when this crisis is over. And so that was yesterday with the Innovation Minister.
Okay, yeah, because if they don't include them, then there's going to be a little bit of short-sightedness there. And I'll say this from a chamber perspective, that across this country, more people are employed by small business than all other businesses combined. And when you look at a city just like Barrie and the surrounding area with our local geographics, there are over 8,000 registered businesses.
Yeah.
So you look at what you're aware of that's in the city and surrounding area, both you and Doug, between Barrie, Springwater, Oro, and all that. The majority of them obviously are small businesses, small entrepreneurs. Those are the people that are keeping the spokes running. And I mean, certainly, medium and large businesses we absolutely need. But when you start to miss the dynamic of those small businesses, those entrepreneurs that are just starting up and they're starting to get rolling, they will never ever get to be that medium or large businesses, because they won't survive this unless the government steps in to help them get through this, as they're helping every other business and every other Canadian. So I'm kind of at a loss that hasn't happened yet, but I certainly hope it will come to fruition.
Well, for me, I mean, the solution, again, if I look through my very simplistic lens, is to find, perhaps other ways to look at revenue loss rather than the standard sort of 30%. And listen, you can tell when a business loses 30%. I mean, they can simply tell it off the books. But how do you tell that with a startup that's just at the front end of revenue, revenue gains? And so, is there an alternative way to calculate that? Maybe instead of looking at a year behind, maybe look at a month behind or 2 months behind, right? If you fall into that category, to try to help those innovators continue through this process. Now, I'm sure many innovators on this call would acknowledge that they may not necessarily have the overhead that, with the employees and rent and other situations. Many of them are working out of their homes, for example, but at least find a way to encourage them to keep going. And they'll keep going just based on their entrepreneurial spirit, but at least provide them with some access to funding that can encourage them to continue on that innovative process. So, if anybody has any suggestions on this, if you do know the gaps, maybe one of those gaps is to find that alternative to revenue loss. Look more in the near term backwards than the longer term backwards, then maybe that's one of the solutions. But I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Great, thanks, John. So the next one sort of falls in line with that too. It states, I'm a self-employed contractor. Even though I pay myself from the company, as of now, I do not qualify for the 75% wage subsidy. What benefit would I qualify for? Trades will be hurt long term. With no revenue, people will not be renovating their homes. Has this been considered?
Tuckey?
Thanks, John. Well, being a self-employed, there is coverage for that, but if he's still working, there isn't coverage. Is he concerned about, sorry, what was the question? Is when and if he gets?
Yeah, it says trades will be hurt long-term with no revenue and will not be renovating their homes. Has this been considered? So this individual person here is stating that, they're obviously they're the owner of the company, but they draw a salary from the company or a wage or however they do it. But they're saying they don't qualify for the wage subsidy. So they're wondering what benefit they would qualify for.
Well, the self-employed do qualify for that. That's why they've made those changes. So they will be qualifying. They will be covered under that. That is one of the things that one of the first questions we got asked a while ago, but definitely they've made some adjustments, and anybody who is self-employed who normally wouldn't be paying into EI would not be getting benefits, but they will be covered under this plan.
Sounds like he's on the company payroll anyways, though, right, Todd? Like,
that's the way I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it
So
says, sorry, it says, John, I'm a self-employed contractor. So I don't know if this is just an individual on their own or an actual larger entity, but it says, you know, even though I pay myself from the company, as of now, I do not qualify.
So the question becomes, does he pay himself through payroll or does he pay himself through dividends, right?
Right.
And so if he pays himself through payroll, he qualifies. If he pays himself through dividends, he doesn't qualify.
Right.
That's the way the system.
Yep, I assume that was the case. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, right into the next one. If we are not laying off our staff, but some staff cannot work due to childcare issues, do we lay them off as per Code A, a shortage of work on the record of employment, or are we allowed to lay them off if no other staff has been laid off?
I am going to ask that whoever is asking that question to call my office.
Okay.
Because I can't answer that immediately right now.
Yeah,
unless Doug can.
The specifics of coding, and John, I have Heather in our office listening on too, and I know she's taking notes, so we can get that answer. The coding and the details, that's done every day by our people in our office. They will know that offhand, and we'll get that answer provided to them.
And Susan in my office, who's watching right now, I know would be more than happy to find an answer to that question specifically. And again, you know, it comes back to different nuances. That's why we're here, right? We're here to, you know, answer as best we can the questions that are being asked. But for those more nuanced questions, my staff work with this stuff day in and day out. The details, the nuances, and they'd be more than happy to help you. If you live south of Tiffin Street or your business is south of Tiffin Street, give my office a call. If it's north of Tiffin Street, including Innisfil as well, call my office. North of Tiffin Street, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, call Doug's office. And between Heather and Susan, you'll get an answer.
Okay, thank you. The wage subsidy program. Are there any further modifications anticipated? Is there any consideration to it being a sliding scale? They state that our income has definitely dropped, but it may be slightly north of the 70% of last year. This would make us completely ineligible, all or nothing. So the way I'm reading that is that they're not going to show their 30% loss. They're going to be just slightly less than the 30% is the way I'm reading this. So is there a gray area there? Like I know that they've said, you know, you have to show the loss of the 30% and it has to be directly related to COVID. It can't be that it's just that time of year and your industry isn't busy. It has to be related, but is there a bit of a gray area? Is there wiggle room, or is it you have to be a minimum 30%?
Oh, sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and there's some, Parliament will probably be getting recalled. John knows more details on this as he's on our leadership team to get more details on this wage subsidy, because it wasn't all passed perfectly the first time around. So Parliament needs to be recalled to discuss this part of it. But the 30% decline right now is, as far as I'm concerned, with the notes we've been given, is in black and white. There's no gray area there, and that's going to be the problem. Now, it is a scale where it's not just starting now. So if you're down to almost 30% now, I hate to say this, but as the economy is going, you probably will be there next month. So it is dependent, and you don't have to apply for it next week. If you are slowly declining, it will kick in then. But as far as I'm reading it, and I've got my notes right in front of me, it says businesses must show a 30% decline in revenue year over year. John, do you have anything different to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is, whoever asked that question is right. I mean, showing that 30% decline year over year is the criteria for that 75% wage subsidy. So if you show, for example, a 29% decrease, you're not going to qualify then for the 75% wage subsidy. But that would kick you into the next category, which would be a 10% wage subsidy. And the 10% is what the previous government had announced. So you would default back into that 10%. But that's how that would work. So it's not a sliding scale. It's a 30% number, and then you default back into the 10%. And so again, there's a lot of information that's available on our website, but you know, we're still trying to find some clarity. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier today. The simplicity of the system should be that you know, if businesses know what their payroll is, whatever that number is, they should be, and they can show they can show a decline in their business at least by 30%, then that 75% wage subsidy should be transferred directly to them based on what their payroll is and their ability to meet their employees' obligations. And the other thing, you know, with respect to the 75% wage subsidy, I think most employees understand at this point that this is designed for them to meet their obligations. Clearly, employees are not going to be making the same amount of money. There's a maximum of, I think it's $847 per week on the 75% wage subsidies. So, you know, it's up to a maximum of $58,000, I think is the number, which works out to $847 a week. So they're not going to be making the same amount of money as they would if they were making obviously more than that. But, you know, this is designed, this whole system is designed in the short term to help people meet their obligations, whether it's their debt obligations, mortgage, you know, obviously, you know, food and all of that stuff is what this program is designed for. So I'm sure we'll get some more clarity as the legislation is introduced. But right now, there is that 30% limit. It's an arbitrary number. Anything below that, then you would fall into the 10% wage category.
Todd, if I could just add to that, please. Two quick things. John, I agree completely when I hear your words. This is to help people in the short term. The situation is, and employers need to know this and we pass this message along, the government's own notes are saying that the funds will be available in approximately 6 weeks from when that opens next week. So there is going to be a gap there. And if it's going to get as many applications as they're thinking next week, they're looking at minimum 6 weeks for any of this money to start to roll. So yes, as long as as much as it's a short-term fill, it's going to seem, you know, when you're having troubles right now putting some food on the table, some groceries for your family, 6-7 weeks is a long time to wait for money. So people need to be aware of that. It's not going to be coming out as an overnighter in 2 or 3 days, unless they change the system, which they hope I definitely hope they do, because as John said at the very beginning, we're getting those calls and emails right now that are heartbreaking. People are struggling now. In 5, 6, 7 weeks, it's going to be absolutely unlivable. So hopefully that gets sped up, but there is right now a waiting time on that. As much as it's a short-term fill, 6 weeks is the minimum they're saying right now from the time of application.
Right, okay. Can you elaborate on the income tax process? How do the deferrals work?
Well, I think the government's been very clear on the deferrals. We're looking, I know Doug's looking it up again, but GST deferrals, other at source defer. They're really trying to help business as much as they can to defer GST and all. And Doug, I don't know if you've had the time to pull it up here, but
I've got some notes here, John, so I can go from this on corporate taxes. So yeah, corporate tax returns due to be filed after March 18th may be deferred until June 1st, 2020. Corporate taxes due after March 18th may be deferred until August 31st without penalty or interest. For those corporations required to make monthly installments, payments are deferred until August 31st, pardon me. But there's been no announcement. Those are deferrals. There's been no announcements on how the catch-ups are going to be made yet. So please keep that in mind. January and February 2020 installments have also been deferred. These deferrals do not apply to payroll remittances. GST and HST remittances may be deferred until June 30th, 2020. Hopefully that helps a little bit. There's some more information on that, Todd, and I could perhaps send that to the chamber. We could put some more of that online because there is a bit more to that. But that's the corporate tax side of it. Then obviously there's the personal tax side of it too, which I could also forward on to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and we'll share that again on all the chamber sites so that everybody can stay on top of that. Okay. I'm a self-employed independent contractor, pay myself from the company. Am I able to apply for the wage subsidy? And I believe we have touched on that one.
Yeah. Payroll, if you accept income from payroll and you have at-source deductions and you file taxes on that pay, then you would be able to apply for the CERB. If you pay yourself through dividends, then you're not eligible for the CERB.
Right. Okay, we're going to touch on the subsidy again. For the 75% subsidy, it notes that employers should try to pay the 25% to keep employees at 100%. Does this mean that the employees would be working full-time and only getting 75% if I have no funds to pay the remaining 25%? If so, does that open me up to risk? Should I be cutting back their expected hours of worker productivity to 75% to match the pay level they would be receiving?
That was a question that was asked of the finance minister on Wednesday. And I think he made it very clear that although they would like businesses to supplement the 75% wage subsidy with the 25% top up, I don't think that there realistically is any legislative authority on the part of the government to mandate employers to top up that 25%. So effectively, that is a nice to have, not a need to have requirement. And so, listen, how can anyone reasonably expect businesses who are burning through cash right now, even those that are trying to maintain their employees at this point, to top up 25% of revenue that's dropped in some cases 90 to 100%? That's not a reasonable expectation on the part of any government official. And as I said, that 75% is intended to keep people on the payroll and not have them switch over to the EI role. That's the critical part of this. And so again, that expectation among employees is that if they're getting that 75%, which could work out to be more than what they would get on the CERB, because the maximum on the CERB is $500. The maximum on the wage subsidy is 800 and what was that number you gave me? 870?
847.
847.
847, yeah.
So the numbers are starkly different. And the idea behind a wage subsidy is to keep that connection with the employer, even if the work has dried up to a point where the employee is not required, or they're coming in on a part-time basis, and on the case of being an essential business. But it's also, once we get through this, to make it that much easier to ramp up the business and the productivity of the business and their employees as well. And so it's to maintain that connection. But again, as I said, the expectation among the employees is that this is designed for them to meet their obligations for their family. And so the wage subsidy is designed specifically for that.
Right. Okay. And
Todd,
we'll get into the subsidy. Yep.
I just see on our screen that there's still 16 questions asked. John and I do have another commitment we're going to need to go to. So I want to make sure if anybody's waiting for an hour and they're frustrated, please understand that we mentioned this a couple of times now. If you do email our offices, we will make sure all your answers get answered. As John said, if you're south of Tiffin, you can email John's office. If you're north of Tiffin, email my office, and we'll make sure those questions get answered. Because I can see we've got about 4 minutes left. We're probably going to get 1 or 2 more questions in. But I don't want people to get frustrated. We do have another commitment both of us need to attend to, but make sure you send those in to our offices and we will get your questions answered. And
as I said, and the commitment, so everybody knows, is that we are on a webinar with our small business critic, James Cummings from Edmonton. and we are discussing many of the issues that we're talking about today. At least I think Doug's going to be on that call as well.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. And you're a bit of a mind reader because that's exactly where I was starting to go when you jumped in there. So thank you. Because, yeah, there are a lot of questions we won't get to, and I can appreciate that these questions are certainly important to every single person or company that has put these forward and they want answers. So again, right after this meeting, all your information for both yourself and John will be on the chamber site so people can reach out, send you the questions directly. And as both of you said, you have staff working diligently. You will get back. You'll get them their answers. So with that, let's jump into the next one. The government has implemented a wage subsidy to help businesses with their payroll, but as an essential business selling, there's a concern that our receivables will be deemed uncollectible should some of our customers not survive this pandemic. Is the government looking at providing a domestic credit insurance platform to assist?
I have not heard of anything like that, and I am well aware of that myself. I've had some calls regarding that same question, and I know some people very close to me, they're dealing with that same issue right now. So yes, it's very tough right now to still be doing some businesses, selling out some product, invoicing with the potential that you may not get that invoice paid because it's such a tumultuous time right now. So I have not heard of anything to cover for those payables going forward. John, have you heard any programs or plans or talk about that?
Nothing, but I think this is a good one to bring up with James this morning, Doug.
Yeah.
Just to see if he's heard anything. This is again our small business critic who has been talking to his counterpart, the minister Mary Ng. But this is a question that we're going to ask this morning to find out. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go into our last question. The Ontario government is going to provide an update today on their projections and possible scenarios. Do we anticipate the federal government doing the same? And in the news recently, it sounded like social distancing will be in effect till July. Do you have any comments on this?
Well, I definitely have a comment. Yeah, I have heard Premier Ford will be coming out today. One of the first things I said to my wife this morning, I'm kind of on the edge of my seat waiting to see those numbers. I think those could either help or hurt what's going on right now. So hopefully social spacing as our distancing has worked, is working, and will continue to work. That is important. We need to put that right up there first and foremost. We have been pushing, and a lot of people have been pushing. The Prime Minister, John, you may add after this, as far as I'm hearing right now, he has no plans to release those numbers federally. I know there's been some talk of that. I've seen it in the media. I've seen him being asked that. I hear he keeps saying no, but I know a lot of people are relieved to see the Premier is going to be releasing our numbers today. I have mixed feelings on whether on releasing them or not. Hopefully, if they're well and low, it doesn't put people in a complacent mode where they stop their social distancing. But also, if it's very high, it's going to scare some people a lot too. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out, and hopefully, people just remain safe, keep social distancing, keep washing your hand. That's the number one message through all of this that we can do.
So
closing remarks, John?
Well, I want to answer that.
Sure, yeah.
I just, because, you know, look, the country is paying an incredible price right now. All of us are paying an incredible price. Businesses, individuals, you know, we've effectively seen, you know, large percentage of businesses that have had to shut down. We've got 1.6 million people on the employment insurance rolls right now. At least that's the latest number as of yesterday. So we're all paying a price. And we want to know, quite frankly, why we're paying this price. We know that there's a health crisis that's going on. And if it's going to be as bad as the price we're paying, then we need to know how long this is going to last. We need to know what the government knows. And so I'm really hopeful that we can get some answers from the Ontario government today, and I fully expect that we're going to, just what the models look like in terms of this crisis. Now, if we look around the world, any evidence that is out there, whether it's Italy, Spain, what's happening in the United States, certainly the numbers are increasing here in Canada. If we're going to pay this price, we want to know that, and I know business wants to know, that how long we're going to be paying it for, because that's how decisions are made. That's how people, whether they're individuals or businesses, get a sense of certainty. And you know what? If it's bad, tell us it's bad. If it's going to be better than what people are paying a price for right now, tell us that as well. And I know that the government's position is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the models, but they have that information and they need to be transparent about that information so that you, Todd, and every other person in this country knows what that information says, because it doesn't belong to the government. That information that they've gathered belongs to each and every one of us. And if we're going to pay a price and continue to pay that price, I want to know, and I think it's a reasonable expectation on the part of every Canadian to know how dire this is going to be, or how it looks like as we move through this. If it's a bad situation, I want to know. If it's not as bad and I'm paying this price, I want to know as well. And so that could determine a lot of the decision making that is made by individuals and governments as well. So at a minimum, we need to know what's in that information. If you want some closing remarks, I will say, and I'll pass it to Doug in a sec, a lot of my time over the course of the last week has really been to try to help business, local business, integrate into the supply chain for personal protective equipment. I've been speaking to many local businesses who've retooled. I know Doug has as well. I now have a direct line to the Minister of Procurement, Anita Anand, her Chief of Staff. And anytime a local business has brought issues to me and products that they would like to integrate into the supply chain, whether it's personal protective equipment, hand sanitizers, or others, I just got that yesterday. I've been putting them in touch with the minister's chief of staff. Now, the important thing for business, anybody that wants to integrate into the supply chain for this crisis, is to make sure that they register to buyandsell.ca. It's important to do that because that's the first question that I get asked by the minister's staff is, has that business registered with Buy and Sell? So I've spent a lot of time in the last few days really trying to help business navigate through that, because everybody wants to help, business wants to help, and we'll make sure that we're here to be that conduit to help you get into the supply chain if you need to be. The other thing that I would say finally as well is, there's been a real push now to support local business, local entrepreneurs, gift certificates, gift card buying programs. I know my wife and I, Doug, you're the same thing. You've been ordering out, trying to support local restaurants who've been forced to close down. My encouragement to everybody is to continue as much as we can to support local businesses, and don't forget about those local social organizations that are hurting as well. They've seen fundraising dry up, and yet the demand for an increase in their services is happening as a result of this crisis. So let's support business. Let's support those community organizations that support us as best we can. And my final thought on this is that, like everything else, and we've faced a lot of things in this country over these years, wars. We'll get through this. We'll get through this, and we'll get through this because we're together and because we're a strong knit community, not just a business community, but a community of people who care about each other. And just know that Doug and I, our staff and our families are there for every single one of you to help navigate through what is a high time of anxiety and anguish for many people. And we're there for you. And whatever you need, just let us know.
So thanks, John. Doug, any final comment?
Yeah, very brief, because I know people's times are tight now and we're a little over time. So thank you, Todd, for hosting this. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I just like to echo a few of the words that John said, that obviously there's no way to sugarcoat this. We're going through some tough times, very tough times. Everybody is. Businesses, peoples, families. We will get through this together. But one of the number one things, as I've heard a few people say, it's lives versus livelihoods. Obviously, lives need to come first. We will get through this. We will rebuild the economy. It's tough. Being a business person myself, I know it's difficult. I'm dealing with that myself right now. I'm seeing what's going on. I'm feeling what's going on. But we will get through it as a group. We are here to support you. There are a lot of programs out there. Please reach out. find out what they are, apply for them now. Some of them you can be putting your names in for. Communicate with your employees. That's what they're looking for right now. There's a lot of fear, and what they need right now is some comfort level, something to lower their anxiety, something to help them through this. Everybody's gonna need some help right now, and I know we can all get through this together. And John and I, through our offices, are here to do anything we can to support all the businesses in our whole area, and support your employees as best we can too. So stay safe, everybody. Stay social distance. Keep washing your hands, and we'll get through this.
So I'd like to thank both yourself, Doug and John, for speaking with us today. I know how incredibly busy you guys are, your offices are, and you know, unfortunately, there's going to be no slowdown in sight. I know we will be arranging another one of these soon. You know, as you know, things at Parliament are changing on a regular basis, basically daily, and trying to keep up on that information is tough. And I know you guys are doing a tremendous job of keeping us informed, and we really appreciate that. In closing, again, thank you everybody for joining us and for the work you're doing in your business every day. We urge every leader in the community to immediately shift your focus to the singular objective of slowing the pace of the transmission of the coronavirus. Both our federal and provincial governments have enacted measures that will only be effective if all employers step up and do their part to protect our provincial health and welfare. All levels of government have expressed a commitment to protecting business, employees, and everyday Canadians. To ensure that we can all come through this together, I also strongly urge everyone to stay at home and avoid any travel to cottages to stop the spread of the virus. The hospitals and grocery stores in those areas are not equipped to deal with the influx of people at this time and will quickly become dangerously overwhelmed. The Barrie Chamber and the Sandbox are here to help you through this. Please feel free to email or call if you have something. And again, for those of you we weren't able to get to your questions today, please feel free to reach out to one of these two gentlemen. If you don't have their contact info, it will be on the Chamber site immediately following this. And also, I'll echo some of John's words here. We employ everyone to please shop local. We need more now than ever to support our local businesses. Whatever it takes, take a gift card from a restaurant or a gift certificate to help businesses ride out the storm. Every little bit will help someone. So again, gentlemen, thank you for your time, and for everybody that tuned in, thank you. And again, get your questions off to these gentlemen. They will definitely get back to you and get you some answers. Again, gentlemen, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it on behalf of the Chamber and the Sandbox, and have a safe day.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.